Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos.
Main character, after dying in his previous life, wakes up as the Indominus Rex from the Jurassic World inside a Monster Hunter. What is the Indominus Rex gonna do inside a Monster Hunter?
Monster Hunter, what if I am reborn as the Indominus Rex? Chapter 1, The First Breath. I remembered the truck, the sound of metal striking bone, the sudden end of my old body. That memory lingered as I opened my eyes again. I lay inside a cracked shell, pressed in by damp warmth and the thick smell of calcium dust. My body felt heavy, wrong, larger than anything I had ever carried before. I shifted, the hard edges of the egg scraping against my skin. A ridge pressed against my skull. Claws I did not expect tore through the softened shell. The egg split. Light entered in pieces, filtered by the canopy above. The nest sat in a clearing, a shallow depression lined with damp earth and the broken remains of other eggs. Heat still clung to the dirt, keeping the air close. My chest rose and fell, slower than I remembered, each breath deeper than a human body could draw. I looked down at myself. Grey-white scales stretched across my arms, running to claws that were sharp from birth. A long tail coiled behind me. My reflection showed faintly in the wet membrane of the broken shell. A long skull, teeth set deep into my jaw, eyes narrow and alert. I was not human. I was something built to hunt. I pushed against the last shards and dragged myself free. My claws sank into the ground, tearing grooves through the soft dirt. My muscles moved with precision I did not know, each step more natural than walking had been in my old life. The forest surrounded the clearing. Tall trees rose in all directions, branches twisting high. The air carried the sound of insects, the drip of water, and the shifting of distant wings. The world felt alive, sharper than before, every noise distinct. I could hear the rustle of something small hiding under leaves, the slow beat of wings high in the canopy, the distant cry of a larger beast beyond the trees. My stomach ached. Hunger pressed against me, immediate and powerful. It drove me forward, away from the nest, into the shadows of the forest. Each step was slow. My claws dug into the soil with every movement, leaving deep marks. My tail swung behind me, heavy enough that I had to shift my weight carefully to stay balanced. My head turned with each sound. Everything was clearer than it had ever been. The smell of water reached me first, faint but steady, drifting from the east. My throat felt dry. I followed it. The forest grew thicker, the ground damp and uneven. Ferns brushed against my legs, soft and breaking easily under my weight. The stream appeared through the trees. Water ran across stones, shallow and clear, glinting in the weak light. I lowered my head, my snout touching the cool surface. The taste was clean, sharp. My throat worked in deep pulls until the ache eased. When I raised my head again, the sound of movement caught me. A small shape darted at the edge of the clearing. It froze as I looked toward it. A jaguar's, yellow scales, small body, sharp teeth. It crouched low, tail twitching. Its eyes locked on me, wary but curious. It was not alone. A second and third jaguars slipped from the undergrowth, circling, their low growls carrying across the stream. My stomach twisted again. Hunger sharpened my focus. My claws dug into the earth as I crouched low. The jaguars tensed. The first one lunged. I moved faster. My claws cut through its neck, the body dropping before it had time to cry out. The others hissed and scattered, running back into the brush. Their steps crashed through the leaves but grew faint quickly. The body twitched under me. Warm blood spread across the dirt. My teeth sank in. Flesh tore easily. The taste filled me, heavy but satisfying. The ache in my stomach eased. When I finished, the stream ran quiet again. The forest settled, the earlier cries and rustles returning as though my presence no longer mattered. My body felt stronger. My muscles flexed with weight that grew more natural the longer I stood. The remains of the nest still sat behind me, but there was no reason to return. I turned deeper into the forest, my steps pressing into the soil. Every sound pulled at me now. A wing beat overhead, the scratch of claws on bark. The air shifted with scents, each one layered over the other. 4 scales, water, stone. The world here was alive with things that lived and killed the same as I did. I moved carefully, not rushing. My weight shifted silently despite my size. My claws clicked lightly against stone when the dirt thinned. The forest opened again. A wider clearing stretched forward, the center marked with heavy prints pressed into the soil. I crouched low and sniffed. The scent was strong, bitter, marked by scales and force. A great jaguars, larger than the small ones that had attacked me, heavy enough to bend the ferns with its passage. It was close. The hunger had eased, but instinct kept me still. My body lowered, claws ready, muscles tense. My tail twitched once behind me. The forest stayed quiet. The jaguars did not return yet. I stayed crouched, my eyes fixed on the path it had left. The scent told me enough. It moved south. I turned north. I pressed deeper, away from its territory. The forest rose with slopes, roots tangling the path, stones breaking through the dirt. My claws scraped across them. The air cooled slightly, a faint wind carrying through the higher branches. Night approached. The forest shifted with it. Insects grew louder. The light dimmed, shadows lengthening. Shapes moved where I could not see them fully. My chest rose and fell slow, steady, ready. I found a space between roots where the earth dipped shallow. I lowered myself there, my body coiling tightly. My eyes stayed open longer than I expected, following the movements of the forest. Only when the insects steadied into one rhythm did I close them. Sleep came fast. Chapter 2. The First Kill at Dawn. The forest pressed close around me. The air carried the dampness of night still fading, heavy with the smell of wet earth, moss, and the faint metallic tang of blood still drying on my claws from the jaguars the evening before. My body was coiled beneath a broad root, my tail wrapped half around me, my head lowered against the dirt. Sleep had been deep but light, every shift of the forest shaking me awake for moments before I fell back into stillness. The first sound that truly pulled me back was not the chatter of insects, nor the steady dripping of dew falling from leaves above, but the soft, uneven shuffle of steps. It came from the undergrowth just beyond the clearing. Small, quick movements, halting, followed by the faint scrape of claws over bark and the short, sharp breath of something testing the air. My eyes opened slowly. The faint morning light cut through the canopy, painting the clearing in pale grey. My pupils narrowed to the brightness. My ears tracked the sound before my body moved. The steps grew closer, more than one. Their breathing mixed with the smell of scales, sweat, and hunger. Scavengers. The nest I had left behind was far enough that I should not be followed, but the carcass of the jaguars I had killed and fed on lay behind me along the stream. Its scent would have lingered, spreading into the trees. That was what had drawn them. I was not their first target. They had come searching for scraps. I did not rise at once. I lay still, my head tilted just enough to look through the curtain of leaves and roots at the figures that began to slip into view. 2 smaller jaguars emerged first, their yellow hides dull in the early light. They crept forward, noses low, tails twitching with unease. Their bodies shifted constantly, muscles tight, ready to spring away if threatened. Their eyes flicked across the clearing. Behind them, a third followed, slightly larger, its steps heavier. They did not see me yet. Their focus was fixed on the ground, on the scents they followed. Their heads turned toward the west, toward where blood still dried near the stream bed. The ache of hunger pulled at me again. Though I had eaten last night, the size of my body made the meal little more than a momentary relief. My stomach tightened at the sight of them, the thought of warm blood tearing loose under my claws again. My claws flexed into the dirt. The sound was faint, but enough. The lead jaguars froze, head snapping up, eyes locking on the shadow beneath the roots. I moved before it could react. My body surged upward, dirt spraying as I shoved through the space between roots. My claws slashed forward. The first jaguars gave a short, sharp cry before my weight crushed it against the earth, bones snapping under my foot. Its body went still almost at once. The other 2 scattered, teeth bared, hissing. One circled wide, trying to flank me. The other leapt forward in a reckless burst, jaws snapping at my side. My tail swung hard, slamming the charging jaguars aside. It crashed into a tree trunk with a dull thud and fell limp, its chest caved in. The third hesitated at the sound, its eyes flicking between me and the bodies of its packmates. It turned to flee. I lunged after it. My claws tore into its back before it could vanish into the brush. Its cry cut short, body jerking before it went limp in my grip. The forest went still again. Only the sound of my breathing filled the clearing. My chest rose and fell heavy. The taste of blood hung sharp in the air. I lowered myself to feed. The bodies were smaller than the first jaguars I had killed, their flesh thinner, their bones fragile in my jaws. But they were enough. My teeth tore through them quickly, hot blood coating my tongue, the ache in my stomach easing with each bite. The meat was fresh, the kill clean. I ate until only bones and scraps remained, scattered across the dirt. The morning light grew stronger while I fed, breaking fully through the canopy now, showing the streaks of red across my claws and snout. When I finished, I stepped back. My body felt heavier, my movements slower with the weight of food. I drew in a long breath, letting the scent of blood fade into the forest. The scavengers were dead. No sound of others followed them. The stream still flowed nearby. I moved back to it, lowering my head to drink. The water was cool, washing away the taste of blood. Drops slid from my snout as I raised my head again, scanning the forest line. The forest was quieter now. My presence and the kills had silenced some of the noise. The insect hum was steady again, but the cries of small animals had faded. Only the distant call of a bird high in the canopy broke through. I stayed still for a long time, listening. No larger threat approached. The jaguars had come only as scavengers, not part of a wider pack. My position was safe. The sun climbed higher, the light shifting gold across the leaves. My body settled, muscles relaxing slightly with the fullness of the kill. I returned to the shadow of the roots, lowering myself again, though my eyes stayed open. Every sound mattered now. The scrape of a branch, the shift of leaves, the faint beat of wings. My claws tapped lightly against the dirt as I watched the forest breathe. The day stretched forward. Chapter 3. Signs of larger prey. The light pressed through the canopy as the day moved forward, changing the forest from grey to green. My body felt steady after the kill, heavy but full. The bones of the scavenger jaguars still lay scattered in the dirt, their scent rising faint and thin now that the blood had dried. The clearing no longer held use for me. The hunger that had been sharp in the night had dulled, and with it came the urge to move on. The forest stretched wider to the north. The slope of the ground leaned slightly upward, the soil damp from constant streams cutting their way down. I followed one such path, a thin trail of water weaving through stones. My claws pressed deep into the mud, leaving wide tracks behind me. The air cooled slightly as the canopy thickened. Each step pressed quiet into the earth, only the low rumble of my breathing breaking the silence. The scents shifted as I moved. The sharp tang of jaguars was left behind, replaced by something heavier, mixed with crushed grass and the musk of larger bodies. Herbivores. Their presence carried through broken branches and wide marks on the ground where they had fed. The smell was old in some places, faint in others, but fresh in patches that grew stronger as I pressed deeper. I paused to study the prints left in the soil. They were broad, splayed outward, pressed deep from weight. Not claws. Rounded, thick, belonging to creatures built to graze and push through ferns. A herd had moved through here recently. I lowered my snout to the trail. The scent carried strong to the east, mingled with the damp of leaves still bent from their passage. I followed, my body weaving carefully between the trees. Each shift of my tail brushed ferns aside. The forest grew louder as I neared them. Branches cracked under weight, steady steps thudding against the ground. The low grumble of calls passed between them, a sound that carried but did not threaten. The trees parted into a wider clearing. There they stood, a herd of Aptonoth. Their hides were thick, pale grey with faint green tones from the moss and dirt they carried with them. Their heads were low, jaws pulling steadily at the plants that grew thick across the ground. Their tails swung slowly behind them. The herd stretched wide, a dozen at least, moving as one mass. I stayed at the edge of the clearing, crouched low. My eyes tracked their movements carefully. They were not predators. Their bodies were built to endure, to graze, to feed in numbers. The herd gave them protection in size, though their muscles were not built for combat. Their scent was strong. The air carried the warmth of their bodies, the musk of their skin, and the crushed plants beneath their feet. It pressed against me, drawing out the hunger I had eased earlier. But I did not move forward, not yet. My claws pressed into the soil, but my eyes stayed fixed. Attacking one would bring the herd to motion. They would not fight directly, but their size and weight would scatter in chaos. A single one could be brought down, but the herd as a whole would resist by flight, trampling everything in their path. I studied them longer, my chest rising and falling steady. Their movements showed no awareness of me yet. They continued grazing, their heads low, tails swaying. The younger ones stayed close to the center, guarded by the larger bodies of the adults. A single bull stood near the far edge, heavier and broader, watching the trees as the others fed. His eyes swept across the forest edge, and his tail flicked with tension. He was the one who would sound the alarm if I broke cover. I turned slightly, moving through the undergrowth to follow the herd from the side. My steps were slow, deliberate. The sound of their feeding covered the faint rustle of leaves as I shifted. I kept distance, studying the pattern of their steps. They moved in cycles, never breaking formation. The forest floor behind them showed wide, trampled paths. Their feeding cleared ground easily, and fresh shoots already broke through older paths. This was their route, their territory. They moved often here. I circled farther, keeping the herd in sight, but staying downwind. The scent of blood still clung faintly to my scales from the earlier kill, and I did not risk carrying it toward them. My body pressed lower with each step, weight balanced forward to keep sound low. The herd shifted slowly eastward. I kept pace, my claws sinking into soft soil where their tracks had already broken ground. The faint cries of birds echoed above, disturbed by the herd's passing. When the slope of the ground dipped again, I saw where they were moving. A wider stream lay ahead, the water cutting broad and slow through the forest. The banks were muddy, flattened by repeated crossings. The Aptonoth reached the water one by one, lowering their heads to drink. Their tails swayed lazily, their sides heaving with the weight of movement. The bull moved last, stepping heavily to the edge and watching as the herd drank. His head turned slowly, scanning the forest. His eyes swept across my position once. I stayed motionless, my body pressed low to the dirt, hidden by the ferns. His gaze lingered for a long breath before he lowered his head to drink as well. The sound of the herd feeding at the water was steady. Slurps, grunts, the splash of steps through mud. Their smell grew thicker here, filling the air around me. My stomach pulled tight. The scent of prey so close pressed hunger forward again. But I stayed still. The risk of charging in while the herd was gathered at the water would scatter them across both banks. A kill might be possible, but the noise and chaos would draw attention from farther predators. Instead, I studied. Each detail mattered. The herd's size, their formation, the bull's awareness, the paths they followed and the points where they drank. Knowledge of them would matter for survival. The herd lingered at the water for a long time. They drank until their sides swelled, then returned to grazing at the edge of the clearing. The younger ones played briefly, nudging one another before being pushed back toward the center by adults. Their movements stayed cautious, never straying far. The bull raised his head once more, sniffing the air. His gaze swept past me again, his tail flicking in agitation, but no sound of warning left him. He lowered his head and moved on with the herd. Slowly, they began to move south, back into the deeper forest. Their steps thudded steadily against the dirt. Their scent lingered, carried on the air long after they disappeared from sight. I stayed crouched at the stream, my eyes on the empty space they left behind. My chest rose and fell steady. The hunger pulled, but the moment had passed. The herd was gone. Their path south was clear. I lowered my head to the stream and drank again, the cool water cutting the dry edge in my throat. My claws dug into the mud, leaving deep marks where I stood. The water carried faint scents downstream, fish, insects, the musk of other animals. The forest was quiet again once the herd had left. Only the insects and the water moving filled the air. I stepped back into the brush, following the trail south, keeping the scent of the Aptonoth fresh in my mind. Chapter 4. The Herd's Path. The scent of the herd lingered thick on the forest floor. Broken ferns and crushed leaves stretched south in a wide trail, damp earth marked by deep, rounded impressions from their heavy steps. I followed it slowly, my claws pressing into their tracks as I moved, the soil still soft from their weight. The air was filled with them. Their musk clung to the trees, rubbed along bark where their bodies had brushed. Patches of torn grass and plants lay half-chewed where they had paused to graze. Their numbers kept the path clear, trampling everything underfoot. My head lowered as I tracked. My nostrils pulled in their smell, sharp and recent, the warmth of their bodies still hanging on the air. I could hear them faintly in the distance, a steady rhythm of thuds, the grind of their teeth pulling at plants, the low grumble of their calls as they kept together. I kept my pace slow. Each step was placed with care, my body crouched low enough that the ferns shifted only lightly against my sides. My tail swung steady behind me to balance my weight. The forest was quiet except for the herd. Small animals had scattered at their passing, leaving the undergrowth empty. Only insects buzzed near my ears, and the occasional cry of a bird cut high through the canopy. The herd moved steadily south. I followed the curve of their path as it bent around wide trees and shallow rises in the ground. They did not rush, their pace built for endurance rather than speed. As the slope rose slightly, the forest opened into another clearing. I slowed, pausing at the edge of the brush. The Aptonoth herd was spread across the open ground, grazing calmly. They stood in a loose formation, heads bent to the plants that grew thick in patches. The younger ones stayed close to the center as before, shifting nervously each time a sound carried from the trees. Adults flanked them, tails swaying slowly, heads lifting from time to scan the forest edge. The bull stood apart, near the far side of the clearing. He was larger than the rest, his body broad, his steps heavy. His head rose more often than the others, his nostrils flaring as he tasted the air. His tail flicked in steady rhythm, his attention never far from the tree line. I stayed still in the shadow of the brush, lowering my body further until the leaves hid me. My eyes tracked each movement. The herd did not know I was near yet, their calls steady and unbroken, their steps unhurried. I studied their pattern carefully. When one lifted its head, another lowered it. Their movements overlapped, never leaving the herd fully unguarded. The bull's watch was the most constant, his head rising every few breaths. His presence kept the herd steady. The scent of crushed plants was strong here, layered over their musk. The ground was torn up from constant feeding, patches stripped bare to dirt. Their tracks filled the soil in all directions, overlapping until no single path was clear. I circled slowly, moving along the edge of the clearing to keep them in view. My steps pressed light, my weight shifting carefully to avoid snapping branches underfoot. My eyes never left the herd. From this angle, I could see their path forward. The far edge of the clearing dipped into another slope, leading to thicker trees beyond. Their heads turned in that direction often, the adults nudging the younger ones toward it. They would move again soon. I crouched lower, watching closely as they grazed. The younger ones moved with less caution, tugging at plants and stumbling into each other. Their cries were higher, uncertain, answered by the deeper calls of adults nearby. Each time one strayed too far, an adult stepped close, pressing it back into the group. The bull's eyes scanned the forest edge again, his head lifted high, ears turning. His nostrils flared as he drew in the air. My muscles tensed as his gaze swept near my position. I did not move. Leaves brushed against my scales as I pressed closer to the ground. His eyes lingered, then turned away. His tail flicked once, then returned to steady rhythm. The herd continued. They fed for a long while, stripping plants from the ground until the soil showed bare patches. Then they began to shift slowly, turning toward the southern slope. The younger ones cried, pushing against the adults as they were herded forward. The adults moved in wide formation, keeping the group tight. The bull followed last, his heavy steps crushing the ground flat. His head stayed high as he moved, scanning the trees behind them until they were nearly out of the clearing. I waited until the last tail disappeared into the trees before I moved. My claws sank into the soil as I stepped forward, crossing the clearing to follow their path. The ground showed fresh prints, pressed deep, leading south. The slope was narrow at first, then opened wider as the trees parted again. The herd had slowed here, their steps careful as they moved downhill. Their scent hung thick in the air, strong and recent. I followed at steady pace, my head low, nostrils pulling in every trace of their trail. My eyes tracked the broken plants, the branches brushed aside, the fresh soil pressed flat. Each mark they left was clear. At the base of the slope, the ground leveled into another wide stretch of forest. Here the herd had spread again, their tracks covering a broad area as they grazed. The soil was damp, torn by their feeding. Fresh leaves and stems lay scattered, chewed down to pulp. The sound of them carried from farther ahead. Their steps thudded against the dirt, their low calls echoing between the trees. I crouched low again, keeping distance as I moved closer. Through the brush, I saw them gathered once more. The herd fed calmly, but the bull's posture was tighter now. His head lifted more often, his eyes sharper on the tree line. His calls were louder, pressing the herd closer together. Something in the air had shifted. I stilled, my claws sinking deeper into the soil. My eyes tracked the bull, then the edges of the clearing. The herd's unease spread through their movements. Their tails twitched faster, their heads rose more often, their feeding slowed. I could not yet see what pressed them to caution, but their instincts were sharp, and their tension told me something was near. I crouched lower in the brush, steadying my breath as I waited. Chapter 5. Testing the herd. The herd shifted uneasily, their tails twitching, their heads lifting often from the plants. The bull's posture had grown tighter, his head turning in longer sweeps, his eyes watching the edges of the trees. The adults pressed the younger ones inward, forming a dense group near the center of the clearing. Their calls grew sharper, shorter, and the air carried the scent of their unease. I crouched lower in the brush, watching. Their instincts had already pushed them into defense. The source of their tension was not yet clear to me, but their reactions told me that testing them now would give me what I needed, an answer to how they moved when threatened, how fast they ran, how tightly they clung to their herd. I pressed forward. The ferns brushed against my scales as I pushed out of the cover. My claws sank into the soil with a dull scrape as I stepped into the open. The light fell fully across me now, glinting faintly off my pale hide. My head lowered slightly, my nostrils flaring as I pulled in the thick musk of their fear. The nearest Aptonoth froze mid-step. Its head shot upward, its eyes widening. A sharp cry left its throat, loud and urgent, echoing across the clearing. The rest of the herd reacted instantly. The bull let out a deep bellow. His head swung high, his tail lashed once, and the herd began to move. The ground shook as they surged forward together, their heavy steps pounding the soil. They pressed into one another, forcing the younger ones into the middle as they ran. Their formation did not scatter fully. They clung together, a tight knot of bodies moving as one mass toward the slope to the south. Their speed was slower than mine. Their bodies carried weight built for endurance, not bursts. But the sheer number of them filled the clearing, and their collective force left little space open. Dust and crushed plants flew up under their feet as they charged. I stepped forward further, closing some of the distance. My claws carved grooves through the dirt as I moved. The herd reacted with sharper cries, their calls overlapping into a chorus that echoed into the forest. The bull stayed at the back. His heavy body moved slower, but his head turned constantly, watching me. His calls drove the others forward, pressing them into the slope. His steps were deliberate, never turning his flank fully toward me, always keeping his eyes sharp on my movements. I slowed slightly, watching. The herd's formation stayed tight even in flight. The younger ones remained at the center, protected by adults that pushed close around them. The bull's position at the rear kept them from scattering in panic. Their reaction was sharp, but not chaotic. Their defense was built into their herd, not into strength or speed as individuals. The slope ahead funneled them into a narrower path, and their cries echoed louder as they pushed into it. The sound carried into the deeper forest, bouncing off the trees. Birds lifted from the canopy above, their wings rushing against the air as they fled the noise. I stepped after them again, my pace steady. The bull noticed. His tail lashed harder, his steps heavier. He bellowed again, the sound deep, shaking his chest. The herd pressed harder into the slope. The scent of their fear filled the clearing now, thick and sharp. Their musk spread heavy over the trampled plants, the crushed dirt, the damp air. My nostrils flared at it, my stomach tightening again. The herd reached the slope fully, their bodies pushing upward in a line. Their formation stretched thinner here, but the adults pressed in on the sides to hold it tight. The bull stayed last, his head turning often, his eyes fixed on me as I followed. I stopped at the base of the slope, watching them move. Their pace slowed with the incline, their bodies straining under the weight, but their formation did not break. The bull lingered longer than the others, bellowing again before finally turning to climb after them. Their cries faded slowly as they disappeared into the trees above. Only the sound of their heavy steps lingered, thudding against the soil until it grew faint. The clearing they left behind was torn and scattered. Plants lay trampled, dirt pressed flat, and the air still carried the strength of their scent. I stayed still at the base of the slope for a long while. My chest rose and fell slowly. My claws flexed into the dirt. The herd had shown me enough. They moved together. They reacted sharply to threats, but always as one. They would not scatter easily, and they would not leave the weak behind. Their defense was their formation. Breaking it would mean splitting them apart, cutting through their tight mass, and dragging one down before the others could press on. I turned from the slope and lowered my head, pulling in one last breath of their fading trail. Their musk stretched south, strong and recent. They would move for hours before resting again. I stepped back into the clearing, circling slowly around the torn ground. My eyes followed the trampled plants, the grooves pressed deep by their steps. The memory of their speed, their calls, their formation remained clear. The forest grew quieter again as their sound faded. Insects returned first, their hum filling the air. Birds settled slowly, their calls cautious from the canopy. The stillness of the clearing spread once more. I lowered myself near the edge, crouching in the brush again. My body pressed into the soil, my tail curling slightly behind me. My eyes stayed on the slope where the herd had vanished, my ears tracking the faintest echoes of their calls. The hunger in my stomach twisted again, sharper now from the chase without kill. But patience steadied me. The herd had shown me what I needed. Their paths, their strength, their defense, all clear now. The day stretched forward, Chapter 6, waiting in the empty clearing. The herd was gone. Their cries no longer echoed through the trees, and the ground no longer shook under the pounding of their steps. All that remained was the trail of damage they had left behind, trampled soil, crushed plants, and the sharp musk of fear lingering in the air. I stayed where I was, crouched low at the edge of the clearing. My chest rose and fell slowly as my eyes swept across the space they had abandoned. The sun had climbed higher now, its light cutting down through the canopy in thin beams, touching the broken grass and the churned mud. The scent of them was still strong, heavy and layered. It clung to every part of the ground where they had passed, pressed deep into the soil by their weight. It coated the leaves they had stripped and the plants they had broken. It would stay for hours before fading. And that scent would bring others. Scavengers, smaller hunters, creatures that lived off the scraps left behind when larger prey moved through. The herd was too big, too strong, and too well formed for such predators to attack directly, but the damage they left behind was enough to draw attention. I lowered my body further, sinking into the brush. My claws pressed into the soil steady, my tail coiled close, hidden by ferns. My head lowered, my eyes fixed on the clearing. The air was quiet again. Only insects buzzed steadily, their wings flicking through the stillness. A bird cried faintly in the distance. The smell of water drifted faint from the slope beyond, but it was the herd's scent that pressed strongest. I stayed motionless, my breathing slowed. My eyes tracked every shift of the leaves at the far side of the clearing. My ears caught each sound, the hum of insects, the distant crack of a branch, the scuttle of something small in the undergrowth. The first sign came with a faint rustle. The ferns at the far edge moved lightly, bending with weight. A shape pushed through slowly, small. Yellow scales glinted faintly in the light, a jaguar's. Its head lifted as it stepped into the clearing, its nostrils flaring. Its eyes darted across the trampled ground, drawn to the heavy scent. Its tail twitched, and it lowered its head again, sniffing the crushed plants. Another followed behind it, smaller but quick, its movements more frantic. It chirped softly, a high sound, and the first jaguars turned its head sharply before lowering it again to sniff. They stepped further into the clearing, their bodies weaving over the torn plants. They moved in jerks and pauses, their heads constantly shifting, their ears twitching. They were cautious, but the lure of the herd's trail pulled them forward. I did not move. My body stayed pressed into the soil, my eyes tracking their every step. More rustles came from behind them. Another jaguars emerged, then two more. A small pack, no more than 5 in total. They fanned out across the trampled ground, sniffing at broken plants, scratching at the dirt where the herd had passed. Their calls were low and short, their tails twitching with quick movements. The largest of them raised its head. Its eyes swept the clearing, pausing briefly in my direction. My body did not shift, my breath remained slow. After a moment, it turned its head again, lowering its snout to the ground. They had not seen me. The scent of the herd had their focus completely. They nipped at the plants, chewed at scraps left torn, and nosed at the soil. They were scavenging, picking through anything the larger beasts had left behind. My claws flexed lightly against the dirt. Hunger pulled at me again, sharper than before. The herd had escaped me, but these smaller scavengers had wandered close. I waited longer, letting them spread further into the clearing. Their calls grew slightly louder, short bursts of sound as they shifted from one patch of torn plants to another. Their steps grew quicker, their bodies more relaxed. The longer they lingered, the less they watched their surroundings. The largest one stepped closer to my side of the clearing. Its snout pressed into the dirt, pulling at plants crushed flat. Its tail swung lazily, its body turned slightly away. I moved. My body surged forward, breaking from the brush in one fast burst. My claws dug deep into the soil, pushing me across the ground. The jaguars lifted its head in shock, its eyes wide, its cry sharp and short. I struck before it could move. My claws tore into its neck, dragging it down. Its cry cut off instantly, its body twisting once before it went limp under my weight. The others shrieked at the sound. Their heads snapped up, their bodies spinning. They scattered across the clearing, their cries loud and frantic. One darted toward the far edge, its tail whipping. Another leapt sideways, crashing through ferns. The smallest froze for half a second, then bolted after the others. I swung my head down, my jaws sinking into the first body. The flesh tore easily, warm blood filling my mouth. The strength of the taste eased the sharpness of hunger. But the cries of the others rang through the trees. Their panic spread into the forest. Birds lifted from branches, insects scattered from the ground. The sound carried far. I tore quickly into the kill, pulling free heavy chunks of flesh. My claws sank deeper to hold it down as I ripped through the hide. The heat of the body warmed the soil beneath it, blood spreading across the dirt. The pack had scattered fully now. The forest quieted again after their cries faded, leaving only the sound of my feeding. The insects began to return, their hum steady again. I ate until only bones and scraps remained. My jaws cracked through ribs, pulling marrow free before I stepped back. My chest rose heavy with each breath, my body heavier now with the weight of food. The scent of blood clung thick in the air again, mixing with the herd's musk. The clearing was marked twice now, once by prey and once by death. I stepped back into the brush, lowering myself again. My eyes swept across the clearing, my ears tuned to every shift of sound. The jaguars had been drawn by the herd's trail. Others could be as well. The scent of blood would only make it stronger. I settled lower, my claws tapping lightly into the soil. I would wait. The forest moved on around me. The light shifted slowly as the sun climbed higher. Insects buzzed steady. Birds returned to branches. Small creatures scuttled through the undergrowth again, cautious but quick. I stayed still, my body pressed deep into the brush, my eyes fixed on the clearing. My chest rose and fell steady, my nostrils pulling in every scent. Time stretched. Another rustle came later, this time from the opposite side of the clearing. A lone jaguar stepped out, smaller than the first pack. Its head lowered instantly to the ground, sniffing at the blood. Its body stiffened as the scent registered, its tail twitching sharply. Its eyes darted across the ground, lingering on the scraps of bone and hide. It chirped softly, uncertain, its head lifting. It froze suddenly, its gaze locking on the place where I waited. My body did not move. Its body tensed, its tail lashed once. Then it bolted back into the brush, its cry sharp and panicked. The sound cut off quickly as it fled. The forest stilled again, leaving only the faint hum of insects. I remained hidden. The clearing would draw more, but only if I waited. The scents layered heavy here, carrying far through the forest. Each minute that passed pressed them deeper into the soil, marking the space as one of feeding. I stayed patient. Chapter 7. Patience in the blood-scented clearing. The clearing smelled of prey and of death. The Aptonoth herd had trampled it into bare earth, and the jaguar's pack I had broken added the sharp edge of blood. The scents mingled together, thick and strong. The air clung heavy to my nostrils. I stayed hidden in the brush, pressed low against the dirt. My tail lay curled, only the tip twitching now and then. My eyes scanned the open space. The sun sat high above, its light shifting through branches, warming patches of soil that were still dark with blood. The forest had begun to move again slowly. Birds returned to branches, their calls cautious at first, then steadier as time passed. Insects filled the air, the buzz constant and sharp. Small creatures scuttled across the undergrowth near the edges of the clearing, darting quickly, never lingering. They smelled the blood but did not approach it. I did not move. My chest rose and fell slow, steady. My ears turned with each sound that reached me. Every rustle mattered. Every shift in the rhythm of the forest meant something was near. The remains of the jaguar's body lay where I had left it. Bones scattered, scraps of hide, streaks of blood pressed deep into the soil. Flies swarmed the remains already, their noise loud compared to the stillness of the rest of the forest. The scent of them layered over the sharper smell of blood, carrying farther with each passing moment. Time passed. The light moved, shadows shifted, and the clearing stayed quiet except for the steady hum of insects. I did not let my body relax. I waited. The first rustle came as the sun lowered slightly. A shift in the ferns at the far side. Not wind, too deliberate. My eyes locked on the movement. A small head poked through. Narrow, pointed, with yellow scales glinting faintly. A jaguar's again. Smaller than the ones before, its body thin, its eyes sharp and wary. It sniffed the air, its nostrils flaring wide. It stepped into the clearing, its body crouched low, its head turning quickly from side to side. It chirped softly, a high note, then moved toward the remains. Its tail lashed in quick bursts, nervous. It reached the bones and lowered its head. Its teeth snapped at a scrap of flesh still clinging to the rib cage. It chewed quickly, its eyes darting upward every few seconds. Another rustle came from behind it. A second jaguar stepped through, slightly larger. This one was bolder, its body upright, its steps firmer. It walked straight to the remains, its head lowering instantly to feed. Its tail swung slowly, its body less tense. The first froze for a moment, head lifting sharply at the sound. Then it returned to feeding, chewing quickly again. I stayed motionless in the brush, my claws flexed lightly into the dirt. The hunger pulled sharp in my stomach, but I waited. Their cries would draw others. Their feeding would spread the scent stronger. More came. One by one, jaguars slipped from the trees, drawn by the noise and the smell. Soon 5 crowded around the bones. They pushed against one another, their jaws snapping as they fought for scraps. Their cries grew louder, sharp and frantic, echoing across the clearing. The forest stirred at the sound. Birds lifted suddenly from the canopy. The brush rustled faintly as something else shifted deeper in the trees. The jaguars did not notice. Their heads stayed buried in the kill, their cries overlapping into constant noise. I watched longer. My eyes swept across the tree line beyond them. The air carried more than just their musk now. Another scent drifted faintly, heavy and sharp, layered under the jaguars' cries, something larger. The jaguars froze. Their heads snapped up at once, their ears pricked. Their bodies tensed, their tails stiff. They sniffed the air sharply, their cries cutting off. The brush opposite me shifted suddenly. A larger shape pushed through, heavy and deliberate. Green scales, broad head, thick body, great jaguars. Its eyes locked instantly on the smaller jaguars crowded at the kill. Its jaws opened wide, letting out a deep growl that rumbled through the clearing. The smaller ones shrieked and scattered, darting in all directions, their cries sharp with panic. The great jaguar stepped forward, its head lowering to the remains. Its tongue flicked across the blood-soaked soil. Its jaws closed on the ribcage, crushing it easily. Bones snapped loud under its weight. I stayed low, my eyes fixed on it. My claws dug deeper into the dirt. My chest rose heavier. The hunger twisted again, sharper now. The smaller jaguars had been easy prey, but this one was stronger, larger. Its presence filled the clearing. It tore at the remains quickly, swallowing bones and flesh in heavy gulps. The sound of its feeding was loud, wet and cracking. Its sides heaved with each swallow. The smaller jaguars had not fled far. Their cries still carried faintly from the trees, but they did not return. The great jaguars had claimed the kill fully. The scent of it spread across the clearing, its musk layered with the blood and the herd's trail. The air grew thicker with it, sharper to my nostrils. I shifted slightly, my body lowering further into the brush. My eyes never left it. The great jaguars fed for a long time. It left little untouched, its jaws cracking through even the larger bones. Blood stained its snout, coating its teeth. When the remains were nearly gone, it lifted its head, its eyes scanning the clearing. It paused, its nostrils flared. Its head turned slowly, sweeping the edges of the clearing. Its gaze lingered near my position. I did not move. My body stayed pressed into the soil, my breath shallow. Its eyes narrowed. Its tail lashed once. Then it turned and stepped slowly back into the brush, its body swaying heavy with the weight of the meal. The sound of its steps faded as it disappeared into the trees. The clearing fell silent again. Only the insects remained, their hum steady. The scent of the great jaguars clung heavy to the air, layered over blood and musk. I remained hidden. The forest would respond again. The herd's trail, the blood, the jaguars, and now the great jaguars, each had marked this place. The noise and scent would carry far. Others would come. I stayed low, my claws pressed deep into the dirt, my eyes fixed on the clearing. The day stretched on. The sun lowered, shadows lengthened, but I did not leave. The forest moved around me, shifting with each sound, each scent. The clearing remained a point of draw, and I would wait, Chapter 8, following the great jaguars. The scent of the great jaguars hung thick in the air even after it left the clearing. Blood stained the soil, but its musk was stronger, heavy and sharp, pressed into every step it had taken as it returned to the forest. My nostrils flared as I breathed it in. The smaller jaguars had scattered and would not return soon. The clearing was empty now. The great jaguars was the only one worth following. I pushed slowly out of the brush. My claws sank deep into the soft soil as I stepped across the trampled ground. The sun had lowered slightly, the shadows longer, though the air was still heavy with heat. The broken plants crunched softly under my weight as I crossed the remains of the clearing. My eyes stayed fixed on the path the great jaguars had taken, where the ferns still bent under its passing. I lowered my head, my nostrils pulling in the trail. It was strong, clear, impossible to miss. The great jaguars was large, its body heavy, and it left a wide mark behind. Soil pressed flat, leaves bent down, branches broken where it had brushed through. Its steps carried deliberate weight. I followed, my pace slow but steady. My tail swung slightly to balance my movements as I slipped into the trees. The trail cut through the undergrowth, each step marked clear. My ears tracked the forest as I moved. Birds shifted above, their calls sharp before falling quiet. Small animals scuttled away, vanishing into holes or beneath roots as my steps shook the ground. The scent grew fresher as I pressed on. The great jaguars had not gone far yet. Its musk mixed with the faint metallic tang of blood still coating its snout. The ground began to slope downward. The soil grew wetter, my claws sinking deeper with each step. The sound of water carried faint through the trees. A stream lay ahead, its surface catching weak light through the branches. The great jaguar stood there. It crouched low at the edge of the water, its jaws dipping into the stream. Blood still stained its snout, dripping slowly into the clear flow. Its sides heaved with each breath, its stomach swollen from the heavy meal. Its tail swayed slowly, the tip twitching. I stopped at the edge of the brush, my body crouched low. My eyes locked on it, studying. It had not noticed me yet. Its head stayed lowered to the stream, pulling in long gulps of water. Its ears twitched faintly, but its focus was on drinking. My claws flexed into the soil, my muscles tensed. Hunger pressed sharp again in my stomach. I had eaten, but not enough. The smaller jaguars had filled me only for a time. This one was larger, stronger, more dangerous. But its body was slowed by its swollen stomach, its movements dulled by the weight of its meal. I stepped forward. The ferns brushed aside with the sound of snapping stems. My claws dragged across stone as I shifted into the open. The great jaguars froze instantly. Its head snapped up, water dripping from its jaws. Its eyes locked on me, sharp and narrow. It growled, a deep rumble in its chest. Its tail lashed sharply, dirt scattering behind it. Its body shifted low, its claws digging into the mud. It bared its teeth, blood still staining them red. I stepped closer. My claws sank into the mud, leaving wide grooves. My head lowered, my eyes fixed steady on it. My chest rumbled low, a sound that carried across the stream. The great jaguars roared, loud and sharp. Its jaws opened wide, showing rows of teeth. Its body lunged forward, water spraying from the stream as its claws tore into the ground. It charged. Its size carried it fast despite its swollen stomach. The ground shook with each step. Its jaws snapped wide, aimed for my throat. I shifted to the side. Its head swung past me, close enough that I felt the rush of air from its jaws. My claws slashed forward, catching its flank. Blood sprayed across the mud as my claws tore deep lines through its scales. It roared in pain, spinning quickly. Its tail whipped hard, catching my side. The force slammed into me, shoving my body sideways into the mud. The impact rattled through my ribs, but I kept my balance, claws digging deep into the soil to steady myself. The great jaguars lunged again. Its jaws snapped for my leg. I swung my head down, my teeth sinking into its shoulder. Flesh tore free under my bite. Blood filled my mouth, hot and thick. It roared again, thrashing violently. Its claws raked across my chest, sharp pain ripping through my scales. I held my grip for a moment longer, then tore free, leaving a deep wound in its flesh. We circled each other now, both breathing heavy. Blood dripped from its wounds, staining the mud dark. My chest strung where its claws had raked me, lines of pain hot against my hide. My nostrils flared, pulling in the sharp mix of blood and musk that filled the air. It snarled, lowering its head again. Its tail lashed back and forth, sending mud flying. It charged once more, its body throwing all its weight forward. I met it head-on this time. My claws slammed into its shoulders, my weight driving into it. The impact shook the ground, water splashing high from the stream as we crashed together. Its jaws snapped inches from my neck, teeth clashing with a loud crack. I shoved harder, my claws sinking deeper into its hide. It roared, its voice cracking with strain. It thrashed, trying to shake me off, but my weight pressed it down. My jaws snapped shut on its throat. The great jaguar struggled violently, its claws raking against my chest and legs, its tail slamming into my side. Pain burned with each strike, but my teeth held. Blood gushed hot into my mouth, spraying across the mud. Its roars grew weaker, its thrashing slower. At last, its body sagged under me. Its claws scraped weakly at the ground, then stilled. Its tail twitched once more before falling limp. I released its throat and stepped back, my chest rising heavy, blood dripping from my jaws. The body of the great jaguar lay still in the mud, its blood spreading into the water, turning the stream red. My wounds strung sharply, but the weight of hunger pressed stronger. I lowered my head, my teeth sinking into its flesh. The meat was thick, heavy, filling. Each bite tore deep, each swallow easing the ache in my stomach. I fed until my body felt heavy with the weight of it. Blood coated my snout, my claws, the mud beneath me. The forest was silent, except for the sound of tearing flesh and cracking bone. When I finally stepped back, the great jaguar was little more than bones and scraps. My chest rose and fell slow, my body swollen with the meal. Pain still burned in my wounds, but the weight of food steadied me. The scent of blood carried strong now, filling the forest. It would draw others. I lowered myself near the stream, my claws digging into the mud. My eyes scanned the trees, my ears tuned to the forest around me. The kill was mine, Chapter 9, guarding the carcass. The body of the great jaguar lay sprawled in the mud, its throat torn open, its blood spreading thick into the stream. The water carried it slowly downstream, staining the flow red. The air clung heavy with the smell iron musk, rot beginning to creep in under the fresh edge. My own jaws dripped, blood coating my teeth and chest. My wounds strung where its claws had raked across me, but they were shallow. Painful, not crippling. I did not move far from the kill. My belly was swollen with meat, but my hunger was never gone. The carcass would last me longer if I stayed, and my presence would keep others from claiming it. I lowered my body into the mud beside the stream. My claws dug into the soil, my tail stretched wide behind me, my chest pressed low. My eyes stayed fixed on the tree line across the water. My ears turned to each sound, wings beating high above, the distant crash of something heavy far into the forest, the steady hiss of insects returning to the clearing. The blood carried far. I could smell it drifting outward in all directions. The forest would answer to it. The light shifted slowly as I waited. The sun dropped lower, shadows lengthened across the trees, and the air cooled. My wounds stiffened slightly as the air dried them, the blood caking around the edges of the gashes. I shifted once, pressing the side that hurt less into the mud, letting the cold soothe it. Birds grew restless. Their cries grew sharper, louder, then thinned as they took flight, leaving the canopy quiet. Small animals had already fled. The clearing was still except for insects and the sound of water lapping against stone. The first intruder came as the sun began to sink, a rustle in the ferns across the stream. Light steps, quick, uncertain. My eyes locked instantly. A small jaguar emerged, its body low to the ground. Its head lifted, nostrils flaring at the heavy scent. Its eyes fixed on the carcass, wide, bright. It chirped softly, testing the air. Then it stepped forward, claws scratching across stone as it crept toward the water. Its tail lashed behind it, twitching quick. I rose slightly, lifting my head, my chest rumbling low. The sound carried across the stream, a deep warning. The jaguar froze, its body stiffened, its head whipping toward me. It stared for a long moment, trembling faintly. Then it shrieked, a high, sharp cry, and bolted back into the brush. The rustle of its steps faded quickly, leaving silence behind. I lowered my head again, pressing back into the mud. My eyes never left the trees. My claws flexed into the soil, leaving deeper grooves. Time stretched again. The sky darkened slowly. The last rays of sunlight bled through the canopy, then dimmed to shadow. Night fell. The forest changed with it. Insects grew louder, their hum constant. Frogs called from deeper in the marsh. The air cooled further, damp and heavy. The scent of blood did not fade. It grew stronger in the night air, sharper, as though the darkness spread it farther. The next came with heavier steps. The brush on the far bank shook as something larger pushed through. The shape that emerged was thick, broad, its hide pale with faint green, an aptonoth, separated from its herd. Its head lowered instantly to the stream. It drank greedily, the sound of water echoing across the clearing. Its sides swelled with each gulp. Its eyes darted up now and then, but its focus stayed on the water. It did not go near the carcass. It smelled the blood but ignored it, more interested in drinking. I stayed still, watching it. Its weight was large, its flesh heavy, but I was too full to rise. I let it drink. Its presence did not threaten the kill. When it finished, it raised its head slowly. Its ears twitched, its tail swung, and it let out a low, drawn-out call. Then it turned back into the trees, its heavy steps fading. The night deepened further. The moonlight cut faint silver through the canopy, striking the water, the carcass, my blood-stained scales. The forest was alive now with sound, chirps, croaks, rustles. The next scent carried sharper, musky, rank, with the stench of rot and damp. My head lifted higher, my nostrils flaring. My ears turned toward the brush upriver. The sound came, low, dragging steps, claws scraping stone. The shape that emerged was long, thin, scaled, its head narrow, its tail whipping behind it. A gyro's. Its tongue flicked, its eyes glinted faint in the moonlight. It hissed low, its head turning toward the carcass. Its movements were jerky, cautious. I rose fully this time. My claws dug deep into the mud, my chest rumbled sharp. The gyros froze, its body stiff. Its tongue flicked again, tasting the air heavy with my scent. It hissed louder, but it did not advance. It circled slowly at the far edge, its eyes darting from me to the kill. It tested forward once, one claw scraping the stone, then stopped. I stepped forward, my tail swinging hard behind me. My claws scraped across stone, loud and sharp. My rumble grew louder, shaking through my chest. The gyros hissed again, its head jerking, but then it turned sharply, slipping back into the brush. The rustle of its body faded quickly, its scent lingering faint before it too thinned. I returned to the carcass, lowering myself back beside it. My chest rose heavy, steady, but I did not relax. The forest would not stop. The scent of blood would keep drawing more. I fed again briefly, tearing more flesh from the flank of the great jaguars. The meat was tough, heavy, but it filled me further. My belly swelled, my movements slower. I tore until only bones and scraps remained along the ribs, then stepped back, blood dripping from my teeth. The night stretched on. More scavengers came. Jaguars returned in small groups, testing the edges, crying nervously. Each time I rose, they scattered, their shrieks loud, their bodies darting back into the dark. Larger shadows passed beyond the trees, too distant to see, their cries low and rumbling. Their scents carried faint, predators keeping away from the kill for now. The moon reached its highest, the forest loud with constant noise. I stayed still beside the body, my chest rising steady, my claws flexing lightly into the soil each time something neared. The kill was mine. Chapter 10. Downstream in the dark. The carcass of the great jaguars lay behind me, bones stripped bare and flesh torn until little remained. The stream carried its blood away, the red already fading into the distance. My stomach was heavy with the weight of the meal, my body slower but steady. The air was thick with the scent of death, and more creatures would come before long. Staying would mean constant challenge. The stream offered another path. Its flow was steady, cutting through the forest. It would carry my scent away and mask my steps. It was the only clean trail forward. I stepped into the water. Mud sucked at my claws as I pressed down, the cool liquid rising halfway up my legs. The flow pulled faint against me, tugging loose clots of blood from my hide. My chest rose with relief as the water cooled the burning sting of wounds across my scales. I moved slowly, careful with each step. The current was not strong but steady, slipping around my legs. Stones shifted under my weight, smooth beneath my claws. Each time one rolled, the water splashed sharply, but the noise was swallowed quickly by the forest. The night was alive with sound. Frogs croaked from the banks, sharp and constant. Insects hummed overhead. A bird screeched suddenly in the distance before silence fell again. My ears tracked each call, my eyes steady on the water ahead. The stream widened as I followed it. The banks sloped shallow, lined with thick reeds. Their smell was sharp, bitter compared to the sweet musk of blood. Shapes darted within them, fish, insects, smaller animals hiding in the dark. I lowered my head and drank once, the cool water sliding down my throat, easing the dryness. The taste was cleaner now that the blood had thinned. The trail behind me disappeared quickly. The blood faded, my scent washed from the mud and stone. The water carried everything away. I pressed forward for a long time. The moon hung high overhead, its faint light cutting silver across the surface. My body moved slower, my muscles heavy with the weight of food. The pain of my wounds dulled further, the water numbing their edges. The banks shifted again. The ground rose on one side, steep and broken with roots. On the other it stretched flat and wide, the soil damp with pools. The air grew thicker, warmer, the smell of rot and damp plants stronger. I slowed, lowering my body slightly as I scanned the banks. My ears caught faint rustles, low splashes, quick steps darting across water. Shapes moved at the edges, small, crouched low. Jaguars again. A small pack moved along the bank, no more than 4. Their heads lowered, sniffing the mud. Their eyes glinted faint in the moonlight, tails twitching sharp. They had followed the scent of blood downstream. They did not notice me at first, their focus fixed on the ground. They chirped softly to one another, short notes. One darted toward the water, its snout dipping low. It froze suddenly as my shadow shifted across the surface. Its head lifted sharply, its body stiffening. Its eyes locked on me wide, alarmed. It chirped loud, high. The others froze instantly, their heads snapping up. I stepped forward, the water rushing louder as I moved. My claws scraped against stone, the sound sharp. My chest rumbled low, steady. The jaguars shrieked together, their cries piercing the air. They bolted at once, their bodies vanishing into the reeds. The sound of their steps crashed briefly, then grew faint, leaving the bank empty again. I kept moving. Their noise faded quickly behind me. The forest quieted again, though not fully. Their cries would carry far. The stream curved slowly, narrowing as it cut between higher ground. The banks rose on both sides, steep, lined with trees that leaned close overhead. The canopy closed tighter, blocking the moonlight. The water grew darker, colder. The air here was different, heavier, sharp with a musk I had not smelled before. My nostrils flared, pulling it in deeper. It clung thick to the banks, strong, marking territory. I stopped, lowering my head. My eyes scanned the dark brush at the edge of the water. The smell was recent. The creature was near. A crack came suddenly from the bank ahead. A branch snapped. Heavy steps pressed into the soil. The brush shifted, and a shape pushed through. Broad-scaled, its back lined with ridges, its head massive with jaws wide and teeth long. Great jaguars again, larger than the one I had killed. Its eyes caught the faint light, sharp and focused. Its nostrils flared, pulling in the scent of blood still clinging to me. Its tail swung slowly, steady, cutting through reeds. It stepped down into the bank, claws sinking into the mud. Its growl rumbled deep, vibrating through the water. I lifted my head higher, my claws spreading wide beneath the surface. My chest rumbled in answer. My tail lashed once, sending water splashing. The great jaguars roared suddenly, its jaws opening wide, the sound tearing through the narrow space of the stream. It lunged forward, splashing into the water. I met it head-on. The water exploded around us as our bodies collided. Its jaws snapped for my chest. My claws raked across its shoulder, tearing lines through its scales. Blood spilled instantly, mixing with the water. It roared again, its claws slashing. They raked across my flank, burning pain cutting deep. I swung my tail hard, slamming it against its side. The force knocked it sideways, crashing it into the bank. Mud sprayed as it hit, but it pushed off instantly, lunging back. Its jaws snapped close to my head, teeth clashing loud. I twisted, my claws striking its neck. Flesh tore, blood spraying. Its thrashing grew violent. The water churned under its weight. Its tail whipped, catching my leg and dragging me sideways. My claws dug deeper, my jaws snapping down onto its back. The taste of blood filled my mouth, thick, hot. It roared, twisting wildly. Its claws struck my chest again, pain sharper than before. I tightened my bite, dragging it down into the water. We crashed together into the stream bed, stones grinding under us. The water surged high, spilling over the banks. It struggled, its body thrashing, but my weight pressed it down. My claws tore deeper, ripping through muscle and hide. Its roars grew weaker, gurgled with blood. Finally, it sagged under me, its movements slowing. Its tail twitched once, then stilled. Its body sank heavy into the mud. I released my jaws and stepped back. My chest rose heavy, my body dripping with blood and water. My wounds burned, but my strength held. The great jaguars lay dead at my feet, its blood spreading in the stream, carried away downstream. I lowered my head and fed. Its flesh was thick, heavy, the meat filling. Each bite eased the burning hunger that had returned with the fight. The water carried its blood constantly away, but the scent of the kill clung strong to the air. I ate until my belly swelled again, my body heavy. Bones cracked under my jaws, their sound echoing faint under the canopy. When I stepped back, its body was torn near bare. Only scraps remained, drifting in the current. The water was red for a long stretch downstream, carrying the sign of the kill far. I lowered myself into the mud at the bank. My chest rose slow, my eyes scanning the water, the trees. My ears tracked every sound. The night stretched on. The forest was awake around me, restless with the noise of the fight and the scent of blood spreading with the stream. Chapter 11. Guarding the streambank kill. The water ran dark, stained red as the body of the second great jaguars drifted against the mud and stones. Its blood spread out slowly, carried along by the stream, painting the surface in long streaks before thinning into the current. The carcass lay where I had pulled it down, its hide torn open, bones jutting from wide gashes, its flesh stripped heavy where I had already fed. The air clung thick with the smell, metallic and hot, layered with the sharper musk of its scales, mixed with the mud of the bank and the damp rot of reeds. The scent spread into the forest, strong and unavoidable. I lowered myself near the kill. My chest pressed into the mud, my claws sinking deep into the soil, leaving grooves. My tail lay stretched along the bank, its tip twitching slightly. My eyes stayed fixed on the tree line across the stream. My ears turned with every sound, the croak of frogs in the reeds, the hum of insects near the water, the faint shuffle of something small moving under roots. I did not leave. The carcass was mine, and I would guard it. The meal was too large to waste. Smaller scavengers would come first, then larger predators if they caught the scent. The water carried it farther with each passing moment. The moon hung high above, the faint light cutting silver across the stream. Shadows of branches stretched over the water, shifting each time the wind moved the leaves. My body stayed still. My chest rose and fell slow, steady, my breathing controlled. The first sound came after a long wait, a rustle in the reeds at the far bank, light steps, quick, uneven. The reeds bent, then parted. A jaguar stepped out, its yellow scales catching faint light. Its head lifted instantly, its nostrils flaring wide. It froze at the sight of the carcass, its eyes narrowing. Its body lowered, its claws scratching across the mud as it crept forward. I lifted my head slowly. My chest rumbled low, deep, carrying across the stream. The jaguar stopped. Its body stiffened, its tail lashed once. Its eyes fixed on me, then on the carcass. It hissed faintly, a weak sound, before it turned sharply, bolting back into the reeds. The sound of its steps faded quickly. I lowered my head again, my eyes steady on the trees. The kill remained untouched. Time passed. The forest shifted slowly. Birds shrieked once from the canopy, then silence followed. Frogs grew louder, their calls constant. The insects never stopped. The stream moved always, carrying blood farther away. More came. Two jaguars stepped out together later, their bodies crouched low. They moved cautiously, their heads jerking at each sound. They chirped quietly to one another, their tails flicking quick. They neared the carcass, sniffing the air, their eyes darting. I rose slightly, my head lifting, my chest rumbling louder this time. My claws flexed deep into the mud. They froze instantly. Their cries cut sharp, loud, their bodies spinning. They darted back into the reeds, crashing noisily as they fled. The clearing fell quiet again. I lowered back into the mud, the sound of my breath mixing with the flow of water. My wounds burned faint, but the cold of the mud numbed them. Blood still clung to my scales, streaks washed slowly away by the water. The moon moved higher, the forest deeper in shadow. The scent of blood grew heavier, the air thicker with it. My stomach pulled tight again. The earlier meal was heavy, but the ache of hunger was never far. I rose and fed again. My jaws sank into the great jaguar's flank, tearing wide strips of flesh. The meat was dense, heavy with blood, the taste strong. I pulled free ribs, cracking them with a sharp snap, marrow spilling. My claws pressed deep into the hide, holding it steady as I fed. Blood coated the mud, running into the water in thick streams. The current carried it away, spreading the scent farther, marking the forest even stronger. When my belly swelled again, I stepped back, my jaws dripping. My chest rose heavy, my body slow. I lowered myself once more beside the kill, my tail curling partly around it. My eyes stayed fixed outward. The next came with heavier steps. The reeds shook loudly. The ground thudded with weight. A broad shape pushed through, thick-bodied, its green scales dull in the moonlight. An aptonoth. It lowered its head instantly, drinking at the water, its throat working in heavy gulps. Its sides swelled with each pull, its tail swinging lazily. It raised its head briefly, sniffing the air. Its eyes locked on the carcass. It froze for a moment, its nostrils wide. Its tail lashed once nervous, but it did not approach. It turned back to the water, drinking again, then stepped away slowly, vanishing into the trees with low, heavy steps. I did not move. It had not been a threat. Its scent lingered faint, then faded. The forest quieted again. The moon dipped slightly. The air grew cooler, thicker. The next scent was sharper. Rot musk, damp. I lifted my head sharply, my nostrils flaring wide. My eyes narrowed on the far bank. The reeds there shifted low, then higher, then parted. A gyro slithered through, its narrow head lifting, its tongue flicking quickly. Its scales glinted faint in the dark. Its eyes fixed instantly on the carcass, then on me. Its body shifted, its claws scraping the mud, its tail whipping behind it. It hissed sharply, its head jerking side to side. I rose fully, my chest broad, my claws spread. My chest rumbled loud, sharp. The gyros froze, its tongue flicking again. It hissed lower, its eyes narrowing, then it circled slowly, testing the air. It stepped closer to the water, its claws scratching stone, then stopped. I swung my tail hard, sending water spraying. My claws scraped across the mud, loud. My rumble deepened. The gyros hissed louder, then turned sharply, slipping back into the reeds. The rustle of its movement faded, its scent lingering faintly before thinning. I lowered myself again. The carcass stayed untouched. The night stretched further. More scavengers came, small packs of jaguars, lone gyros, even a pair of smaller lizards that slinked across the stones. Each froze at the sight of me, each fled after I rose and growled. The forest responded constantly to the scent. The carcass marked the clearing as a point of draw, and my presence held it. When the moon reached its peak, I fed once more. My jaws tore through what flesh remained, my claws cracking bones. I swallowed heavy, filling my stomach until it swelled again. My breath grew slower, heavier. The carcass shrank quickly now. Bones jutted at sharp angles, flesh gone from most of the body. Only scraps clung to the spine. Blood soaked the mud, thick, drying in clumps. I lowered myself again beside it, my eyes steady, my ears sharp. The forest never slept. Chapter 12. Toward the hunting grounds. The bones of the great jaguars were all that remained on the bank. Scraps of flesh clung faint to the spine, ribs bent outward, blood hardened into dark clumps along the mud. I had fed until my body grew heavy and slow, and each time I rose to guard the kill, smaller scavengers had scattered before me. The carcass had given all it could. I pulled away from it. My belly swelled with meat, my muscles heavy with strength. My wounds had closed enough that the pain dulled under the weight of my body. The cold water of the stream had numbed them further, washing blood and mud from my scales. Each step I took now pressed deep into the soil, heavier than before. The forest around the stream had grown too familiar. The creatures that came were weak, packs of jaguars, lone gyros, nothing strong enough to test me. I had fought two great jaguars and won. Their meat had filled me, their bodies broken. My hunger demanded more than the weak. I turned downstream, my head lowering to the water as my nostrils pulled in the air. The stream curved deeper into the forest, its scent carrying with it the musk of creatures farther away. Stronger, heavier. The air itself felt thicker in that direction, filled with traces of larger beasts. I stepped into the water, my claws scraping stone as I pushed forward. The current carried against my legs, steady but weak compared to my weight. Each step sent ripples wide, breaking across reeds at the banks. The forest changed as I moved. The trees grew thicker, their trunks broad, their roots twisted deep into the soil. The canopy closed tighter overhead, letting less light cut through. The ground along the banks grew softer, the air damper. My claws sank deeper into mud when I stepped onto land. The smells changed too. Less of jaguars, more of larger bodies, the sharp tang of fur, the heavy musk of scales, the bitter rot of plants trampled by weight. I followed the stream for a long time. The moon sank lower, the sky slowly lightened to grey. Birds stirred in the canopy, their calls sharp and constant. Insects quieted slightly as the night ended, replaced by the rustle of animals moving through the brush. I paused when the stream widened into a pool. The water spread flat and calm, broken only by reeds. The mud along the bank was pressed deep by tracks, rounded prints broad, set heavy, not jaguars, not gyros, larger. I lowered my head, my nostrils pulling in the scent. Aptonoth. A herd had come here to drink. Their musk was faint now, older, but strong enough to linger. I studied the tracks carefully, circling the bank. Dozens layered over each other, pressed into the mud until no single one stood clear. They had stood here for some time, then moved south. Their trail cut deeper into the forest. I followed, my body lowering slightly, my steps slower, careful. My claws scraped against roots, my tail brushed against thick ferns. The scent of the herd grew faint quickly, replaced again by others, sharper, stronger, muskier, predators. The air changed again as I moved further south. It carried a smell sharper than the herd, stronger than jaguars, musk thick and pungent, mixed with the faint tang of feathers. I stopped, my head lifted, my nostrils wide. My ears turned toward the sound of heavy steps. The ground shook faintly, steady thuds pressing deep into the soil. The sound carried closer. The brush ahead parted suddenly. A shape pushed through, broad body, orange scales, thick head with a ridge running back. its claws dug deep into the earth, its tail swinging behind it. Its chest rose heavy as it exhaled, its eyes sharp and locked forward. An Anjanath. It froze the moment it saw me. Its head lifted higher, its nostrils flaring wide as it pulled in the air. Its eyes narrowed instantly, its tail whipping once behind it. I stepped forward, claws sinking into the mud. My chest rumbled low, steady, carrying through the trees. The Anjanath roared, its jaws opening wide, the sound loud and sharp, shaking the brush around us. Its chest swelled, its steps pounding as it surged forward. The ground shook under its weight. Its jaws snapped wide, its claws tearing through the soil as it lunged. I braced. My claws dug deep into the ground, my head lowered. My chest rumbled louder. Its charge hit fast. I lunged to the side, my claws slashing out. They raked across its flank, tearing through scales. Blood sprayed, hot and thick. It roared, spinning sharply. Its tail swung wide, slamming into my side. The force shoved me back, mud spraying under my claws. Pain flared sharp along my ribs, but I dug in, holding steady. It lunged again, jaws snapping for my head. I reared back, its teeth clashing shut inches from my snout. My claws struck its chest, carving deep grooves through its scales. Blood coated my hands, splattering across the mud. It roared again, louder, its chest heaving. Heat radiated from its body. Its tail lashed harder, dirt scattering wide. It charged once more. I met it head on this time. My claws slammed into its shoulders, my weight driving against it. The impact shook the ground, water from the stream splashing high. Its jaws snapped at my throat. I twisted, my teeth sinking into its neck. Flesh tore free under my bite. Blood filled my mouth, hot and sharp. It shrieked, thrashing violently. Its claws raked across my side, burning lines deep into my scales. Its head snapped hard, trying to break free. I held my grip, tearing deeper. My claws dug into its chest, dragging downward. Its blood poured heavy, soaking the mud. It slammed its head into mine, the force jarring through my skull. My bite loosened. It tore free, roaring again. Blood gushed from its wounds, running down its chest. We circled each other, both breathing heavy. My chest rose sharp, blood dripping from my jaws. Its eyes burned with fury, its tail whipping. Its chest heaved, blood running down its hide. It roared one final time, then lunged. I surged forward with it. My claws drove into its chest, my jaws snapping onto its throat again. This time I pushed harder, my weight crushing it down into the mud. It thrashed once, its claws striking my side, its tail slamming into me. Then its strength faltered. Its body sagged under me, blood pouring heavy into the soil. Its roars cut short, fading to gurgles. I tore once more, ripping its throat wide. Its body jerked, then stilled. Its tail twitched faintly, then fell limp. I released it, stepping back. My chest heaved, my body dripping blood, mine and its. The Anjanath lay still, its blood spreading into the mud, staining the stream again. I lowered my head, tearing into its flesh. The meat was thick, heavy, richer than Jagra's. Each bite filled me, each swallow easing the hunger that burned even after the fight. I fed until my belly swelled again, my body slow. My claws cracked bones, snapping them loud, marrow spilling thick. Blood soaked the mud, running in streams into the water. When I stepped back, my body was covered in blood, my jaws dripping, my chest heaving. The Anjanath's carcass was broken, torn, bones jutting. The air was filled with the stench, spreading far. I lowered myself beside the body, my claws pressed deep into the soil. My eyes stayed fixed on the trees, my ears sharp. Stronger beasts lived here. Chapter 13. Into the Southern Grounds. The carcass of the Anjanath was heavy in the mud, its blood still leaking slowly into the stream. My stomach swelled with meat, my chest burned from the fight, and my scales were streaked with drying blood. The wounds across my sides strung each time I shifted, but my strength had not left me. The kill was mine, but the air carried more than its scent. Stronger creatures moved farther south. I turned away from the body, leaving it for scavengers. The ground sloped downward as I followed the stream. The canopy grew heavier here, cutting the sunlight into thin strips that flickered across the water. The air was thick and damp, filled with the smell of moss, wet bark, and the faint traces of beasts that had passed through before me. The current pressed faintly against my legs as I moved, washing more of the blood from my scales. My claws dug into stone and mud with each step. Roots stretched across the bank, forcing me to shift my body sideways to move past them. My tail brushed against ferns and reeds, snapping stems as I pushed through. Every sound carried louder in this part of the forest. The smell of the Anjanath's blood faded quickly behind me. New scents took its place, stronger, thicker, fur mixed with scale, the musk of predators, sharp and layered. My nostrils pulled it in, my head lifting higher as I followed the current south. The stream widened into a marsh. Pools stretched across the ground, connected by shallow channels. The mud was soft, sucking at my claws as I stepped forward. Insects filled the air, their noise constant, biting at my hide. The water here smelled of rot, but it carried the musk of beasts larger than jaguars or gyros. I paused at the edge of the largest pool. The mud around it was torn and pressed deep by wide tracks. Three-toed, sharp, sunk far into the soil by weight. Their edges were fresh. Rathian. The musk was strong, sharp with scale and fire. My nostrils flared wide, my chest rising heavier as I pulled in the air. She had passed through recently. I lowered my body, stepping slowly through the mud, following the line of her trail. Each print was clear, pressed into the wet soil. Broken reeds marked where her tail had swept. The scent grew stronger as I pressed farther. The marsh opened into another clearing. The mud here was churned, gouged by claws and wings. The smell of blood lingered faint, layered with the sharp tang of fire. Burned plants marked the edge of the clearing, their blackened stems brittle under my claws. She had fought here. The tracks moved deeper south. I followed, my claws sinking into the wet ground. Each step left heavy grooves behind me. My chest rumbled low, steady. My eyes swept across the trees, my ears tuned to every shift in the forest. The ground hardened as I climbed a slope. Rocks jutted through the soil, sharp and uneven. The trees here grew taller, their trunks thicker, their roots twisting wide across the ground. The air shifted again, filled with a stronger musk, thick with scales, heavier than jaguars, heavier even than Anjanath. I stopped at the top of the slope. The forest opened below into wide hunting grounds. Grass stretched across the floor, broken by stone outcrops and tall trees. The wind carried every scent upward, Rathian, Rathalos, Anjanath, jaguars, and more. The grounds belonged to them. I stepped down slowly, my claws scraping stone. The air vibrated faint with distant calls. A roar echoed suddenly across the grounds, deep and sharp, carrying far, Rathalos. The sound shook through my chest. My tail lashed once steady. My claws flexed into the soil. My chest rumbled in answer, low, contained. I moved forward, slipping into the open ground. Each step pressed deep into the earth, my weight carving grooves through the grass and dirt. My eyes swept wide, catching movement in the distance. A herd of Aptonoth grazed far to the east, their heads lowered, their tails swaying slowly. They were prey, but not my focus. The predators here were stronger. I followed the scent of fire, sharper now, mixed with blood. My steps carried me across torn ground, gouged by claws, blackened by flame. Burn marks stretched up tree trunks, their bark charred. Bones lay scattered, stripped clean. My nostrils flared again. The scent was close. The brush ahead rustled suddenly. Wings beat heavy, branches cracking as a shape rose above the trees. Broad wings stretched wide, scales green, tail lined with sharp spines. Rathian. She circled once above the clearing, her roar cutting across the grounds. Her eyes locked downward instantly. She saw me. Her wings beat harder, sending gusts across the ground. She lowered sharply, her claws outstretched, her tail whipping behind her. I braced, my claws sinking deep into the soil, my chest rumbling sharp. My head lowered, my tail swung wide. She struck fast. Her claws slammed against the ground where I stood. I shifted aside, her weight shaking the soil, dust rising around us. Her head snapped, her jaws wide, teeth snapping for my side. I swung my claws, striking across her snout. Blood sprayed, her raw sharp with pain. She jerked her head back, wings beating as she pulled upward. Her tail whipped, the spines cutting close across my chest. I shifted back, dirt tearing under my claws. My chest burned with the brush of impact, scales split shallow. She circled above, her wings sending air rushing across the clearing. Her chest swelled. Fire burned faint in her throat. I lunged forward as she dove again, her jaws opening wide. My claws struck her shoulder, tearing deep. Blood spilled hot, coating my hands. Her fire burst wide, flames searing the ground beside me, burning plants to ash. The heat licked across my scales, sharp, stinging, but I did not falter. My jaws snapped shut on her wing joint, teeth sinking into flesh. She shrieked, thrashing, her wings beating violently. Her tail whipped, slamming into my side. Pain flared sharp, but my grip held. I tore harder, ripping through her wing. Blood poured heavy, spraying across my jaws. She shrieked louder, pulling upward, dragging me slightly with her weight. I let go, dropping back into the soil. She rose clumsily, her wing beating uneven, blood dripping down her flank. She circled again, slower now, her movements unsteady. Her eyes locked on me, burning with fury. Her tail lashed, her chest swelled again. I braced low, my claws dug into the ground. My chest rumbled sharp. She dove once more, fire building in her throat. I surged forward to meet her, claws spread wide, teeth bared, ready to strike again. Chapter 14. Driving the Rathian away. Her roar cut through the air, shaking the branches above. The sound pressed against my chest, but my claws were already dug deep into the soil. The ground under me trembled when she beat her wings, the force strong enough to scatter leaves and send dirt rolling across the clearing. Her body angled down, her claws outstretched, her chest glowing faint with heat. She dove fast, the rush of her wings loud in my ears. I surged forward, my head lowering, my claws slicing across the dirt. When her claws struck, I shifted sideways, the impact sending tremors through the ground. Her talons carved deep grooves where I had been. Her head snapped instantly, her jaws open, teeth flashing as she lunged for my side. I swung my arm across her snout. My claws cut long across her scales, leaving 4 deep lines. Blood sprayed. Her head jerked back, her raw sharp, her body twisting. Her tail whipped immediately. The spines grazed across my chest, cutting shallow but burning hot. Pain flashed through me, but I dug deeper into the soil, bracing myself. My chest rumbled sharp in answer. She beat her wings and lifted off again, her body rising clumsy from the damage to her shoulder. Her left wing dragged slightly, blood dripping down in streams that fell into the dirt below. She circled wide above me, her eyes locked on my body, her chest heaving with fury. Her throat glowed brighter. The heat shimmered around her jaws as fire built inside. I did not wait for it. I lunged forward as she dove again, flames bursting from her jaws. The fire scorched the ground, turning grass to black ash and splitting bark from a tree trunk. The heat licked across my scales, burning faint but not stopping me. My claws struck her chest as she came low. I dragged down hard, tearing long grooves through scale and muscle. Blood poured down her front. Her roar cracked, pain breaking through the sound. Her wings beat violently, lifting her upward again, but unsteady. Her wing joints bled, her chest torn open, her body straining under its own weight. She struggled to rise, her flight uneven. I moved forward, claws tearing dirt. My chest rumbled deep, low, constant. My eyes locked on her as she circled, slower now, weaker. Her tail lashed again, swinging as she tried to balance. The spines struck my flank, sharper this time, digging shallow grooves into my scales. I turned with the impact, my claws reaching upward. I caught her leg as she passed low, raking deep. Flesh tore, her shriek loud, her wing folding as she twisted midair. She hit the ground hard, dirt and leaves scattered, the impact thudding through the clearing. She rolled once, wings flailing, tail lashing. Her claws dug into the soil as she forced herself upright, blood dripping heavy from her chest and leg. Her head lowered, her eyes sharp and locked on me still. I advanced slowly, each step heavy, my claws sinking into the ground. My tail swung steady, balanced. My chest rumbled loud, the sound filling the clearing. She hissed low, her wings stretching wide though trembling. Her body shook faint with strain, her wounds bleeding steady. She snapped her jaws once, her roar broken but defiant. I lunged again. My claws tore across her side, blood spraying in thick lines. She snapped her head, her teeth grazing across my shoulder, pressure sharp but shallow. I shoved her back, my weight slamming her against a tree trunk. The bark splintered under her body, wood cracking loud. Her wings beat wildly, dust and leaves scattering, but she did not lift. Her strength faltered. She shoved forward with her claws, slashing across my chest. Pain burned, scales splitting deeper this time. My chest rumbled sharper, my jaws snapping down onto her neck. I bit hard, my teeth sinking into her scales. Blood filled my mouth, hot and heavy. She shrieked, her wings thrashing violently, her body twisting with force. I tore once, ripping skin, then released, stepping back. Her body sagged, her chest heaving hard. She stumbled sideways, her claws dragging deep into the dirt to hold her up. Her eyes still burned with fury, but her movements slowed. She snapped her jaws again, weak, then beat her wings. Her body lifted slightly, uneven, blood pouring down. She rose clumsily, her wings flapping hard, each beat shaking the air but weaker than before. I stepped forward, my claws digging grooves, my chest rumbling deep. I was ready to lunge again if she dropped. But she rose higher, straining. Her tail lashed weakly behind her. She circled once, her wings unsteady, her blood falling in streams onto the clearing. Then she turned south, her body wobbling in the air, and pulled away. Her roars carried faint as she retreated, growing weaker with distance. Her scent lingered thick, the air full of blood and fire. I stood in the clearing, my chest rising heavy, my wounds burning, my body coated in her blood and mine. The ground was torn, fire scorched into it, trees split and broken from her impact. The forest had fallen silent except for the sound of insects returning cautiously. I lowered my head, pulling in her fading scent. She would not return soon. The clearing belonged to me now. Chapter 15. Holding the burned clearing. The clearing smelled of fire, blood, and broken earth. The soil had been churned into deep grooves from my claws and Rathian's talons. Ash lay scattered across the grass where her flames had scorched the ground. A tree leaned broken, its trunk split where I had slammed her body. The air hung heavy with smoke and the stench of fresh wounds. I stood at the center of the torn ground. My chest rose and fell in heavy rhythm. My sides strung from claw marks and tail strikes, the cuts burning when I shifted. Blood still clung to my scales, half washed away by my sweat and the faint mist drifting from the stream nearby. Her scent lingered, thick, bitter with blood and fire. It carried across the clearing, mixing with mine. She had fled, leaving the space behind, and her absence left silence in the forest. No birds called from the canopy. No insects hummed close to the ground. The only sound was the steady rush of my breathing and the faint crackle of burned plants settling. The clearing was mine now. I lowered myself onto the dirt. My claws pressed into the churned soil, my tail curled across the ground, and my head rested low as I watched the treeline. My nostrils pulled in the air constantly. My ears tracked every faint rustle from the undergrowth. The fight had drawn attention. The roar, the flames, the scent of blood, everything would carry far. I could not leave yet. If I abandoned the clearing now, scavengers and other predators would take it. To hold it, I had to stay. I shifted slowly onto my side, pressing the wounded flank into the dirt. The cool soil eased the burn slightly. My chest rose slower now, steady, controlled. My eyes remained open, tracking the trees. The minutes stretched. The sky shifted above, the light moving gradually as the sun climbed higher. Smoke thinned slowly from the scorched grass. The air grew warmer, damp and heavy. The first sign of movement came as a faint rustle in the undergrowth. My head lifted instantly, my eyes narrowing. A jaguar's crept from the brush, its body low, its steps careful. Its nostrils flared as it sniffed the ground, drawn by the sharp smell of blood. It froze when it saw me. Its eyes widened, its body stiffened. It chirped softly, a faint, uncertain note. Then it turned sharply and bolted back into the brush. The sound of its retreat faded quickly. I lowered my head again, watching the space where it had vanished. My chest rumbled faint, steady. The forest grew still once more. Only the occasional insect buzzed, faint and distant. My claws dug deeper into the dirt, my body coiled but patient. The next intruder came with heavier steps. The ground shook faintly with each one. My head rose, my nostrils pulling in the air. The scent was thick, musky, sharp, with scales. An Anjanath pushed through the trees at the far side of the clearing. Its body was broad, its hide scarred, its jaws parted in a low rumble as it stepped forward. Its eyes fixed on me immediately, its nostrils flaring wide. My chest rumbled loud in answer. I rose slowly from the dirt, my claws flexing, my tail lashing across the ground. My head lowered, my eyes sharp. The Anjanath hesitated. It stepped further into the clearing, its claws gouging the soil. Its head lifted higher, its chest swelling with breath. It exhaled loud, its tail whipping sharply behind it. I stepped forward, heavy, steady. My claws carved deep lines into the soil. My chest rumbled louder, sharp, carrying across the space. The Anjanath's eyes locked on mine. It lowered its head slightly, its growl rumbling deep. Then it turned suddenly, snapping its tail once as it retreated back into the brush. The sound of its steps faded into the forest, leaving silence once more. I stood for a long moment, my chest still rumbling, my claws flexed into the dirt. When the noise of its retreat was gone, I lowered myself again. The clearing remained mine. The day stretched forward. The sun climbed higher, its light cutting stronger through the canopy. The ground grew hotter, the air thick. My wounds stiffened with drying blood, the pain sharper when I shifted. My stomach pulled faintly again, hunger building slowly. The clearing carried scraps. Bones scattered near the stream where Rathian had killed prey before our fight. One ribcage remained mostly intact, streaked with dried flesh. I rose and stepped toward it, my claws crushing ash and dirt beneath me. The ribcage cracked easily under my jaws. I tore what little meat clung to it, swallowing in heavy gulps. The taste was old, dry, but it eased the sharp pull of hunger. I cracked through the bones, the sound loud in the silence, marrow spilling thick. When nothing remained, I stepped back to the center of the clearing. My belly was not full, but the ache dulled. I lowered myself once more, my tail sweeping dirt behind me. The sun reached its peak. The forest was quiet still. The smell of burned grass lingered sharp in the heat, mixing with the heavy musk of blood. My eyes stayed open, my ears tuned to the forest, my claws flexing every few moments. A new sound came from above. Wings, slow at first, then heavier, beating through the air. The shadows shifted across the clearing. My head lifted, my eyes following the sound. A Rathalos circled above, its body broad, its wings wide, its eyes scanning the ground. It passed once over the clearing, its head turning sharply as it looked down. Its roar split the air, deep and powerful. My chest rumbled loud in answer. My claws dug into the soil, my tail lashed across the ground. The Rathalos circled again slower. Its eyes fixed on me as it passed above. Its wings beat harder, sending gusts of air across the clearing. Then it tilted, turning sharply away. Its body rose higher, its wings carrying it into the distance. Its roar echoed faint as it left. I lowered my head again, my chest still rumbling faint. My claws dragged deep grooves through the dirt. The forest fell quiet once more. The sun lowered slowly. Shadows stretched longer across the ground. The air cooled, the heat fading from the soil. Insects grew louder again, their hum constant. Jaguars returned in the distance, their calls sharp and nervous, but none dared step into the clearing. Their cries echoed faint through the trees before fading again. The burned clearing held. It belonged to me. Chapter 16. Holding the Clearing at Night. The sun sank slowly behind the canopy, and the light that had cut through the burned clearing faded. Long shadows stretched across the torn ground, then deepened into black. The warmth of the day left the soil, and a damp chill spread through the air. The ash left from Rathian's fire still carried a faint smell of smoke. It mixed with the stench of blood, dried and fresh, layered across the clearing. My own scent was thick here now, pressed into the soil by my claws and tail, smeared across the broken ground by my body. I remained in the center. My body lowered close to the ground, my claws spread wide into the dirt, my tail coiled slightly at my side. My head lifted just enough to see across the clearing. My nostrils flared constantly, pulling in every shift in the air. My ears turned to each noise, crickets chirping sharp, frogs calling from the marsh, the faint rustle of leaves shifting in the wind. The forest grew louder as night took hold. Insects buzzed in unbroken rhythm. Birds called once or twice from far above, then fell silent as nocturnal creatures stirred. The distant cries of jaguars echoed through the trees, high-pitched and sharp, carrying faint but clear. The smell of meat drifted from the scraps I had fed on earlier. Bones still lay scattered near the stream, stripped but carrying faint shreds of dried flesh. Blood clung to them enough to draw scavengers. I could already smell it, the way the scent spread with the cooling air. The first came as rustles in the brush. My head lifted instantly, my eyes locked on the far edge. Shapes slipped between the ferns, low and quick. Jaguars, 4 of them. They stepped cautiously into the clearing, their bodies lowered, their snouts pressed close to the ground as they sniffed. Their eyes darted constantly, their tails twitching in sharp movements. One moved to the ribcage left by Rathian, lowering its jaws to snap at a strip of flesh. Another crept closer to the tree where Rathian's body had slammed before she fled. Blood still stained the bark, sharp in the night air. The jaguars licked at the dried streaks, its tail whipping side to side as it fed. I rose, my claws pressed deep into the soil, my tail swinging once across the dirt. My chest rumbled low, steady, carrying across the clearing. The jaguars froze instantly. Their heads snapped up, their bodies stiffened, their ears pricked. I stepped forward once, slow, heavy. My claws dragged grooves through the dirt. My rumble deepened. The jaguars shrieked in unison. Their cries cut sharp, panicked. They turned at once, bolting back into the brush. Their tails disappeared into the ferns, their calls echoing faint as they fled. The clearing fell silent again. The insects returned, their hum steady. My chest rumbled a moment longer, then I lowered myself once more, pressing back into the dirt. The night thickened. The moon rose higher, faint light spilling through gaps in the canopy, glinting against the grooves in the soil and the streaks of dried blood. My wounds ached, the cuts along my sides and chest stiff with dried blood, but the ache was duller now, less sharp. My strength held. Hours passed in silence. The forest shifted around me. Once, a large herd of Aptonoth passed in the distance, their heavy steps thudding faintly, their calls low and steady. Their musk drifted through the clearing, but they did not approach. They moved quickly south, their bodies brushing through ferns and reeds as they passed. Later, heavier steps came again. My head lifted sharply, my eyes locked on the far treeline. The scent reached me first, musky, damp, rot mixed with scale. A gyro stepped into the clearing, its body low, its head jerking side to side. Its tongue flicked constantly, tasting the heavy air. Its eyes glowed faint in the moonlight, fixed first on the scraps of bones near the stream, then on me. It hissed sharp, its tail whipping back and forth. It crept closer, claws scratching against stone as it moved. Its head tilted low, its nostrils flaring wide. I rose fully, my chest swelling, my claws flexing deep into the soil. My chest rumbled louder this time, the sound vibrating across the ground. The gyros froze. Its tongue flicked again, its hiss sharper. Its tail lashed hard. It tested forward a step, its eyes locked on me. I stepped forward, slow, heavy, my claws dragging grooves through the dirt. My rumble deepened, sharp and constant. The gyros hissed one final time, then turned sharply. Its body slipped back into the brush, its tail vanishing into the dark. Its scent lingered faint, then thinned with the wind. I lowered myself again, my chest rising steady. The scraps remained untouched. The night passed in long stretches. The forest never fell silent. Insects buzzed, frogs croaked. Distant roars carried faint, deep from the southern grounds. Jaguars cried once or twice in the distance, but none dared step close again. I fed once more on the scraps before dawn. My jaws cracked through bones, marrow spilling thick. The taste was faint, the flesh old, but it kept the hunger away. My belly filled enough that my chest rose heavier, my movements slower. The sky lightened faintly above the canopy. The moon dipped lower, its light fading. The first cries of birds broke through the night, sharp and constant, marking the change. The clearing was still mine. Chapter 17. Day over the burned clearing. The first light pushed through the canopy, turning the edges of the clearing pale. The burned grass and churned soil showed clearly again, blackened patches scattered among claw marks and streaks of dried blood. My body rose slowly from the dirt where I had rested through the night. The soil clung damp to my scales, cooling the aches from my wounds. The forest stirred with the new day. Birds called sharp, constant, their voices echoing across the trees. Insects shifted lower, their hum less heavy than at night. Farther away, a herd of Aptonoth called to one another, their cries deep and steady, carrying faint through the brush. The air was thick still with the smell of blood. Rathian's blood lingered strongest, burned into the ground by fire and spilled across the clearing by her wounds. My own musk layered over it, pressed into the soil where I had dragged my claws, smeared across the dirt by my body when I had rested. No predator or scavenger had dared step into the clearing during the last hours of the night. It was quiet now, except for the calls of prey far away. I rose to my full height, my tail sweeping dirt behind me, my claws pressing deep into the ground. My chest rumbled low, faint, as I stretched each leg. The wounds across my sides pulled sharply, but the pain was duller than before. The cuts had stiffened with dried blood. My strength had not weakened. I paced slowly across the clearing. My claws dragged deep grooves into the soil as I circled. My nostrils flared wide, pulling in every shift of the air. The forest smelled fresh with morning damp, heavy with prey scents drifting from the marsh and the herds grazing beyond. But the sharp tang of predators remained faint in the south and east. Rathian's scent had faded, but faint traces of her musk carried with the wind, far away now. I stopped at the edge of the clearing where bones still lay. The ribcage I had stripped the night before was little more than shards now, cracked by my teeth. Smaller bones from jaguars and older kills lay scattered nearby, dried but still sharp with the smell of marrow. I lowered my head and cracked through several ribs again, swallowing the faint scraps of meat that clung to them. The taste was bitter, dry, but it eased the edge of hunger. I stepped back into the clearing center, lowering my body onto the dirt. The ground was warm already under the rising sun. My chest rose steady, my eyes fixed on the tree line. Time stretched. The sun climbed higher, turning the air heavy with heat. Shadows shortened as light spilled fully into the clearing, burning against the blackened grass. Ash lifted faint with the wind, carried into the trees. The first intruder of the day came with light steps. A jaguar slipped from the brush, its body low, its tail twitching. It froze instantly when it saw me, its eyes wide. Its nostrils flared at the scent of blood, but its legs tensed. I lifted my head higher, my chest rumbling deep, sharp. The jaguar shrieked once, high and panicked, then bolted back into the ferns. Its cry echoed faint, then thinned as it fled. The clearing fell silent again. Later, heavier steps approached. The ground thudded faint with each one, steady and deep. My nostrils pulled in the air, catching the musk of scale and fire. My eyes narrowed on the tree line. An Anjanath appeared, its body broad, its hide scarred. Its head lifted high, its nostrils flaring wide as it pulled in the thick scent. Its eyes locked on me instantly. Its tail whipped across the ground, scattering dirt. I rose fully, my claws carving deep into the soil, my chest rumbling sharp. My head lowered, my eyes steady on it. The Anjanath froze, its claws pressing into the dirt. Its tail lashed again, its chest swelling with breath. For a long moment it stood still, its gaze fixed. Then it turned suddenly, its tail snapping once as it retreated into the trees. The sound of its steps faded slow into the distance. I lowered myself back into the dirt, my chest rising steady. My eyes scanned the tree line, my ears tuned to the forest. The clearing remained mine. The day stretched long. The sun burned hotter as it reached its peak, the heat pressing heavy against the ground. The burned soil shimmered faint in the light, heat rising from it. My body shifted slightly, my claws digging grooves as I adjusted. No large predators came in the hours that followed. Small animals skirted the edges of the clearing, never stepping in. Birds circled above, their shadows slipping across the ground, but none landed. The scent of blood and fire kept them away. By the time the sun lowered again, the clearing still held silent. My chest rumbled faint as I rose once more, pacing slowly across the ground. My claws tore new lines into the dirt as I circled. The air cooled slightly as shadows stretched long again. Night approached. The forest would shift once more, Chapter 18, leaving the clearing to hunt. The burned clearing was still under my control. The soil carried my scent thickly, pressed into every groove left by my claws and tail. Rathian's blood had dried across the ground, leaving black stains among the ash. Nothing had challenged me through the heat of the day, but hunger had begun to return, pulling sharp in my stomach. The scraps left from Rathian's kills were nearly gone, and bones no longer gave enough. I needed fresh prey. The sun had lowered, but had not yet disappeared behind the trees. The shadows stretched long across the ground, the air cooling as the heat of the day thinned. My body rose from the dirt slowly, each wound pulling faint but dull. I shook once, sending ash scattering from my scales, and turned toward the edge of the clearing. I moved into the trees. The ground softened as I left the burned soil, roots pressing against my claws and ferns brushing against my sides. My steps were steady, heavy, but not rushed. I kept my head lowered, my nostrils wide, pulling in the air. The forest carried the musk of prey, herds that had passed through earlier, faint but strong enough to track. I followed the slope downward. The soil grew damp again, the air heavier with water. Calls carried faint through the trees, low and steady, a herd of Aptonoth. I slowed my pace, lowering my body closer to the ground. My tail swept quietly through ferns, my claws pressed carefully into the dirt to keep sound low. My ears tracked the calls as they grew louder, mixed with the steady thud of heavy steps pressing into soft ground. The trees opened into a wide glade. Grass stretched across the floor, dotted with low shrubs. At least a dozen Aptonoth grazed there, their heads bent low, their tails swinging slow. Calves stood near the center of the herd, nudging at plants while adults pressed around them. Their bodies shifted constantly, forming a loose wall around the smaller ones. The bull stood at the rear, its head lifting often, its eyes sweeping the trees. Its tail flicked each time it caught a sound. Its chest rumbled faint as it called, answered by deeper notes from other adults. I stayed at the edge of the glade, crouched low in the brush. My eyes scanned the herd, measuring their movements. They fed calmly, but their formation would tighten if they sensed danger. Their defense was not in strength, but in numbers, their bodies moving as one. The musk of their flesh pressed against me, thick and warm. My stomach tightened, my jaws parting slightly as I pulled the scent deeper. I crept forward, slow, steady. My claws pressed into the dirt with each step. My tail swept silently behind me. The herd remained unaware, their calls steady, their heads low. I moved closer still, each breath controlled. My muscles coiled, my eyes fixed on the nearest adult. Its head was lowered, its flank broad and heavy. The calf near it shifted closer, brushing against its side. I surged forward. The ground shook under my charge, dirt scattering behind me. The nearest apt